This book is definitely on my list of most disappointing books I've ever read. This book is one of those books where the concept is way better than the execution. Before I tell you why, please like and subscribe and tell us what you think in the comments. There's something for everyone on this channel. For the scores, the unit gets the following. Plot 20, nothing happens in this book really. Characters 40, emotional impact 20, aided by the fact that nothing happens in this book. Pacing 85, the pacing was quick. I low-key got through this book in next to no time, and yeah, the pacing was probably the highlight of the whole book. Themes 20, I'll get onto that later. Uniqueness 100. Honvitz fumbled the bag with this concept, but I won't lie, it is unique. Book cover 50, overall score 38. Originally published in Swedish by author Nini Honvitz in 2006, the unit was translated into English and published in 2010. In this world, unproductive women 50 and over and men 60 and over are sent to the unit. To be counted as an unproductive member of society, you have to be childless and work in a dead-end job, really. In this facility, they have their own apartment and their needs are taken care of. There's no need for money or anything like that. But they're here in the unit essentially to die. The price for being in the unit and for being an unproductive member of society at middle age is that the habitants' bodies are harvested for the general public. This ranges from organ donations to participating in clinical trials. Naturally, habitants within the unit don't stay there very long. Our main character, Dorrit, is a 50-year-old woman who we follow throughout the book. We learn about her life and how she got to this point and how she feels about being in the unit. And we follow her as more stuff happens as she forms relationships while she's in the unit. One thing I do appreciate with this is that we get straight to it in this book. It's not long before the main character's in the unit, and it's quite an unnerving concept, the unit, and why it has to happen, which I very much liked and is what drew me to this book. But as we'll see, it doesn't really hold up. Anyway, everything's provided at the unit. It's like a small enclosed town. It has a cinema, restaurant, shops, libraries, everything one would need to be entertained. And we spend the first several chapters exploring this unit. Because the characters in this book are primarily middle-aged and above, probably the third best thing about this book is that sensitivities about other people that you kind of gain with old age and wisdom are shown throughout this book. For example, one thing of note is the kind gestures in the unit by the members. It's something that happens from the very beginning. I like the realistic portrayal here because it's the kind of warm gestures that middle-aged and elderly people have, the know-how to give. In the book, at times, these gestures can seem grand, collective, and a little bit over the top. Yet it's understandable given the world and the circumstances, but more often than not, they're small yet noticeable, and it was very appropriate. For example, like if you're already a resident in the unit and you've gotten used to the ways and you got used to the fact that you're here to die, when new people come in, obviously there's just so much to take in. They have to be introduced and settled down in a very particular way. And we get a few of those sort of like welcoming parties in this book. Of course, with Dorrit's introduction to the unit, and then obviously as she becomes an established resident, she lays things down gently for newcomers also, which I liked. It was a good touch, but I didn't like this book. Again, it's one of those books where the concept is just the concept is elite, but the execution is just not there. And this book has a ton of untapped potential, which in turn means that it has issues as it currently stands. Firstly, the angle Honvitz takes for this dystopian world was definitely the wrong one. This book is very casual throughout. Time magazine said this on the book: Honvitz handles her dystopia with muted, subtle care, neither satirical nor comical. The unit manages to express a fair degree of moral outrage without ever moralizing. This is supposed to be a dystopian, but it's the most non-dystopian book I've ever come across. The dystopian atmosphere is firmly in the negatives. A big thing that hinders this is that, well, firstly, it's still a democratic society from, from as far as I can tell. It's just one where they have this rule about unproductive people. And then you got the actual problem with the unit itself, which is where we spend the majority of the book, like 99%. Again, Holmwitz doesn't really explore whether this is like, I don't know, a state-led thing and it's like some sort of oppressive sort of rule, or whether it's kind of corporations gone awry. She doesn't really distinguish it here, and which is vital, because for dystopians and post-apocalyptic books and things of that ilk, you usually go through the history and like whether or not this is like an oppressive government, or whether it's an oppressive corporation, like with Maze Runner and Wicked. Wicked is a corporation that's tasked to do, XYZ. But I don't know, it's just not thought through. The unit feels like a research and development arm of like a pharmaceutical company. To be honest, that's what it feels like most of the time, and just, the way the staff are there, the way everything is. The themes that this book tries to touch upon, democracy, our obsession with productivity, democracy, feminism, child rearing, etc., are pretty much not explored properly. And I really disagree with Time Out's review of the book. There is no subtlety at all. It's just non-existent. Any sort of deeper attempt to explore society is pretty bland. For example, in this quote, "Anyway, those who safeguard growth and democracy and welfare, they're the ones who own my life. They own everyone's life. And life is capital." This was said by Dorrit, the main character, during therapy. And during those sessions, she talked about her life, society, etc. It was here where the author chose to try and make some sort of statement about life and all its wonders, but it was a big miss. What aided to that miss is that in this book, we're basically just following the main character around the unit. A good chunk of this book is essentially Dorrit being a tour guide to the reader for this weird place that has everything one might need, but a place where you won't stay forever. Additionally, there's no real stance on death. That isn't explored either. Nothing is explored really, and it's kind of weird because there's no qualms that everyone is in the unit to eventually die. This is supposed to be significant, but in this book it just doesn't touch on that. We follow Dorrit as she lives her life in the unit and how she quickly adjusts to it. She finds friends, she has a relationship, and much more. And she goes up to restaurants and she eats, and she's a writer, so she writes, and yeah, is a bit weird. Again, with this book and the concept, the fact that the concept kind of falls apart adds to the big disappointment of this book. But the concept itself is brilliant, but it's still in its early stages, if you know what I mean. It's like Holmwitz came up with the original idea, but that original idea was still in its early stages, but the author decided to just run with it anyway. And it showed in how hollow the book is, especially for a concept of this ilk. It definitely needed to be built upon more, and I think Holmwitz really needs to go to the drawing board and really flesh out, is it a government thing? Is it a government issue? Does the world have too many people and we've got to find ways to kill people and kill older unproductive members of society? I don't know, just something. It needed more. Additionally, the book is quite bland. There's no suspense, nothing compelling really happens. It's kind of like Children of Men. You can see my review for that book here, but it's way worse than Children of Men. The Children of Men was definitely a better book. This book was, again, quite bad. Again, just the negativities of this book, and I'm piling on. I really was excited for this book because the concept had me. Towards the end of the book, in part 3, there's a group of friends that talk about the outside world and how the rules for those who are dispensable have changed. If this book was done right, the shifting of criteria and the implications of that could have been heartbreaking. But up to that point, the foundation hadn't been laid. So even though the criteria for those who were dispensable because they were unproductive, the definition of productivity wasn't explored. There's talk about not having children. Like Dorrit, our author, she doesn't have children. There's talks about when the group of friends are talking, they're talking about professions like teachers and nurses that were supposed to be safe, quote unquote, that apparently aren't anymore. Horowitz doesn't explore why this happened, who's the person or the people making these decisions. So it's kind of just weird. It's kind of just there, just to act as filler for conversation, which is unfortunate because this could have really been something. Part 4, which was the ending, was actually very pleasant though. It was the best part of the book, although it wasn't anything crazy that happened. There's no plot twist, there's no big reveal or anything like that. But I did like it. It was a fitting ending, but of course it just didn't make up for, the rest of the book. Look, I've read a lot more better books than The Unit, and you should check out my reviews for the books in this playlist. There'll be something for you there, I guarantee it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.